I've been trying to do this on the way home, actually, especially after hard shifts where everyone is like...
Our pets' heads are falling off.
Yeah.
Nothing is pleasant. I've heard people talk about this as reframing, but I try to find, the one patient, it has to be a patient interaction. I'm glad that happened.
Yeah.
And the one person I was there to interact with. That can be anybody.
That's really good.
So most of the time, those two tend to be like the most benign, the most like, you're not like describing a disease process well, or you're sounding really smart on the phone to a consultant. It's the person you ran into at the coffee cart and, a family member who was crying and you gave them a box of tissues.
I think that's a great point. It's one thing I talk to a lot of the paramedics about, because they tend to measure the success of their day based on how much high acuity they dealt with and how many paramedic things they did. And like, I haven't intubated somebody in a month. I'm not using my skills. What a waste of my time. But I'm like, you need to pick certain calls out of your day where you just had a good conversation with somebody that wasn't dying, and that's fine. You took them to the hospital, you reassured them, like that's what you're there for.
Right.
And that's going to prevent you from burning out. If you always measure your day by how successful it was and how many people you saved or how many people needed to be there,
a long time sometimes.
We can't let the non-emergent stuff burn us out.
We have a routine at our table with all five of us. We say, what was your high, what was your low, what was your ha? So favorite moment of the day, where what was the lowest moment of your day? And what was a moment you laughed? Like, tell some of these stories. We narrate our way through.
Yeah, that's great.
And there's this interesting catharsis release. There's you know what? I'm unburdening myself. I'm not alone. I don't have to stack all of that in me just to me. So there are ways to do it, but it is a dance for sure.
I've got a question for you. I thought you were going a different direction. You talked about hitchhikers, because something that keeps getting brought up, like in our small group, for example, that I'm in, and sometimes with my wife. And I think when I think about trying to be a good person at work, is like basically how many times do we turn the other cheek? How many times do we give the tunic off of our back, and to the point to where you could do it until the homeless guy has your car. So like, and you could let, I think in our jobs in healthcare, you could never leave work.
Yeah.
You could let it consume you. So I just wrestle, like how, I mean, there's discernment and judgment, the general thing, but how do you actually, what is the line, and there must be one.
Jesus said, the poor you will have with you always, which feels like a throwaway line in the Gospels. Okay, next.
Yeah.
No, like, the poor you will have with you always. You will never fix every problem. There's always going to be gaps. And this is why we need God to be God. So we don't take on a Messiah complex. When I'm over-functioning, when I'm saying yes to 14, 15-hour days all the time and taking every appointment, what I'm actually saying is I'm going to try to fill in for God. And so I'm crushing myself, thinking I'm doing good, and I'm trying to help people. Well, I'm making myself pay, I'm making my family pay, and then I give bad care. So you have to know your own vital signs. You spend your days checking on other people. You got to check on yourself. Am I doing okay? So I'll know in a certain season where it's been intense, instead of taking 6 appointments on Wednesday, I'm going to take 3 appointments on Wednesday. And then Wednesday afternoon, I'm going to run to the gym for 40 minutes and restore. So the poor you will have with you always. You're going to need discernment from the Holy Spirit. You're going to need discernment from your wife. Hey, babe, how do you think I'm doing? What are you seeing in me? Because your partner knows you better than anyone. And Lisa will go, hey, call the dogs off. Who do you think you are? You need to come to your son's basketball game. That's what you need to do. Yeah, yes, ma'am. So I remember that line from Jesus, that there's never going to be a moment where all the calls are made and all the emails are responded to and all the loose ends are tied up. We are living in a fallen world, and the poor you will have with you always. So do your best, but also know how to care for yourself. Because if you break down, everyone breaks down.
Yeah, you don't want to rob Peter to pay Paul, you know. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a quote I wanted to read from your book because I felt like it described our workday perfectly. Let me find it here.
Oh, wow.
You're like, I love this. You know?
Thank you for not talking about my poor church attendance.
Oh, stop.
today.
Stop.
Well, that it does make, that's one of the tough things. With our schedule and our jobs, it's hard to have like consistency. I'm used to like when I was a young life leader, I was like, every Friday is this, every Monday is this, it's hard to build routine. It's just tough.
I attended a church once where there was like one community group that was just for medical people, and I thought it was going to be the answer. They were the most obnoxious group of people. Oh my gosh. Like, there's nothing about them that was like kind to anyone. Everyone was just like trying to be superior on top of everyone else. But they were really nice about being inconsistent or having your pager go off.
They understood at least from that. But yeah. Let the narcissism come through a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, it was hard. It was hard. And I was
Burnout
like,
camaraderie.
Yeah.
Too much, yeah.
I will not forget that phrase. That is a potent phrase.
No, that's a point no one's ever really raised on here. You end up feed off each other like crazy.
Cycle.
So Daniel makes this point in the book about how we ask for the fruits of the Spirit, right? We ask for the Holy Spirit to be on us and to exhibit the fruits of the Spirit, and kind of the methodology behind how we gain those fruits of the Spirit, and it's produced through difficulty. And the quote from the book is, "We burst forth with patience after suffering long stretches with insufferable people. We are good on the other side of people treating us badly.
Yeah.
We extend love to people who are mean. We demonstrate self-control as people come at us and vent their anger." If that's not like a description of our workday in the ER, I don't know what is, but that's producing in us fruits of the Spirit. If you allow it, I think you can allow it to make you a better person, or you can allow it to burn you out. But I mean, that's the same with kids, right? You're not born with this patience to deal with your crazy kids, but in dealing with them, you learn how to be patient with them. And I think that's a really solid point.
And the metaphor of fruit of the Spirit, there's 9 of them, right? People ought to be able to taste God through us. Fruit. Nourished by your joy, nourished by your faithfulness, nourished by your peace. We think it's just kind of a cute metaphor or some abstract idea. No, like these fruits pop out of the branches of our lives, and people are able to taste and see that God is good in the most difficult circumstances because they ran into a great PA, a great doctor, a great whatever. It's not developed in isolation. It's developed through difficult people. And then you give them the very thing that they're almost trying to counteract.
Well, I think being a faithful believer in something that's hard gives us an opportunity to really testify and be missional. I'm a super missional person, I feel like. And I think, I think even recently, it was like a chiller night shift at one of our freestanding places, and I took probably 40 minutes talking to this super anxious patient, and I came out and the staff is like, "Whoa, what were you doing in there?" And I was like, "We were just talking."
At the time,
and which I think that kind of roots me to okay, why are we doing this? Patient care.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I think, and B, it serves the patient, but also even just doing something difficult that or out of place helped that patient, but also I think set an example to the staff. And I think that's where I see almost even sometimes a bigger missional opportunity, because we talk about all this burnout and all these struggles, and then what a light we can be to the people around us who are burnt out and who are struggling. And how can we I have joy not because of me and who I am. I have joy because of something bigger and greater. Mm-hmm. And the people we see, and I think probably with paramedics and on the ambulance, you'll see someone at a call and it's great. Do your care, love those people well. But the people you're going to see day in and day out are the guys on the rig with you, or the nurses that we work with, or the PAs and the MPs I work with. Mm-hmm. And so those are the longitudinal relationships that we can testify to our God by how we act and behave day in and day out, and
Yeah.
earning that right to be heard there. And I think that is how we can sometimes
So
make
good.
almost bigger differences, because we need Christians at all levels of society. And we need, and that's what I love about working in the ER. Everyone's there, nurses, docs, pharmacists, techs, transport people, EVS, chaplains. I love when our chaplain team's coming down and talking to people, so it's just, we need believers everywhere. But yeah, again, and we just have such an opportunity to network and connect with so many different people and reflect God in those, in that.
Yeah. I was listening to a podcast talking about the idea that, like, we believe in a generous God that has created a generous world, and we are here to magnify his generosity. And that is just not how humans operate off the start. And I feel like medicine, particularly like ER, paramedic, that kind of stuff, is really going to attract people who give and serve. It's just kind of like a thing we're all good at. But to be able to approach it from I have a source that is unending and full.
Yes.
So to tap into that, like, my cup is and should always be full. That there isn't like, I can only see 25 patients today because that's the limit of what I can give. Yeah, I'm a human. I have limits. But kind of going back to what you were saying, like, when is giving enough? I don't know. Sometimes I have to position myself from that idea that I need to start really living out the generosity that God has given me, and that is going to be stretched out with patience and mercy and kindness and tenderheartedness. And some days it's just hard because you want to reach back to that anger and be like, I have limits and I am done. I've got nothing left to give.
Yeah.
But
in a 40-year life cycle of work, so let's think about it again with the book of Acts. Every day is not the raising of the dead.
Yeah.
Every day is not, I'm blessed and highly favored and I got all the juice
Right.
and the energy and the wind at my back.
It's not every day is a red line.
No. So there are some days where you will feel bright and full and it'll just be almost easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there are other days where it feels like the same thing that was easy yesterday cost you everything today. But in the cycle of 40 years, you're going to be able to look back on your career and go, we raised them up. We laid hands on the sick and we saw them recover. Jesus was true. And I also know sometimes the Lord just deals with me. I'll be with someone in a meeting and I'll know they are not ready to be well. So Jesus, he comes to a person who's been sick for 38 years and he goes, do you want to be well? I mean, it almost is offensive. It's like shocking. That is the one question you don't need to ask Jesus. Someone who's been on a mat for 38 years laying by the pool, totally bereft and alone and can't even get some friends to throw him in the water when it's stirred and to get healed. Do you want to be well? But Jesus knows that sometimes the pain of being well is greater than the pain of staying stuck. What it's going to cost someone to be well. So there will be times where the Lord, just in my heart, I'm with someone and I can tell. He's like, it's not right now. They're not ready. So I am not going to care more about someone's wholeness than they are. So like think of, and it may just be a little bit different in our jobs on this talking point, but I can't be the one who cares more about this than you. So
it's like Laurie saying, are we the 7th of the 10 people to tell someone to quit smoking, maybe for whatever problem? But I mean, can you meet someone where they're at and say and plant that seed and put it out there? But ultimately, God is the person that changes hearts, and they've got to be the one. Just
the reality is there's so few conditions that we can actually do something about in the ER. If you're dying, we've got you. We have medications and interventions and procedures and specialists. But the most of the patients we see, we're proving that you're not dying and you're going to go home. And there's not a medicine that's going to fix most of their problems. You actually have to do something for yourself, and that is the population we see a lot of, is people that are not in that place to start exercising and tracking their macros and, you know, the hard stuff that you actually have to do.
Maybe just tell them to do the easy stuff, like, you know, for your have you tried some Tylenol? You know, something, you know. Start small.
I want to ask you guys one final question, and then we'll get Daniel out of here. He talks in the book about how important it is for stability in place, and the monks used to have kind of this mantra or this saying that, you know, to avoid them bouncing from monastery to monastery, which a lot of them would do when things are a little bit uncomfortable in this monastery, they're not getting along with someone else, and they would travel all over the place. To kind of avoid this from happening, they had kind of this saying to stay in place and deal with the people, deal with the conflict, and stay in the same place for a long period of time. And one of the clues that you're in the right place is that you have purpose. And do you guys feel like you have, like, that emergency medicine is your purpose?
I mean, I think some people, I've always thought some people go into medicine and that is their calling. I like my job, and I feel I am blessed to do a job where I can directly impact people's lives and I can interact with people face to face. But this is not my life's mission, my life's work. You know, that I think to be a child, a son of God, and to love people for that, and to bring people closer to Him in whatever I can do. That's where I think I really get my why, and I pull that into what I do.
Yes.
But my identity isn't an ER physician.
Yes.
My identity is a child of God, and so again that elevates my ER physician. I feel like, but it's not the end all be all for me.
Your work fits within the larger story,
right? Yeah,
but your work is not the larger.
It's
story.
like, you know, if your life is a dresser of drawers, you know, my work is a drawer, my family is a drawer, but the whole structure is God and Christ and the Spirit.
I'm on the completely other side of it. I do agree that, like, my overall purpose is loving God, enjoying Him forever. But I feel really called to be in ER medicine. This is like the expression of the gifts that God has given me. Or, you know, practice dysfunction in my untreated attention deficit disorder. But if for me, it's like it's not drawers, it's a pyramid. This is a foundational part of what is helping me function as a human, and it's exhibiting caring for these people in these moments where they sometimes can't care for themselves, caring for these people in these moments where, you know, you're meeting someone on their worst day. It's happened a lot in my career that I realize, mostly in hindsight, that I was specifically positioned to be in this moment for this person. Kind of like that movie Crash that was popular like 10 years ago. And so kind of when I'm waiting around for that moment to, like, relight that fire of that purpose, there's all this stuff that I'm sure a lot of people have talked to you about what to do to keep yourself focused, but I really just have to ground myself sometimes, even in the parking lot. You know that you've been spoken to, and this is what you're supposed to be doing. Maybe, you know, this hospital, maybe this city, maybe that's different, but, like, doing this type of medicine is where I have positioned to you. Go do it to the fullness of your ability. Do this as a gift for me today.
Yeah, I like that. I think I'm kind of in between you two. I think I don't like to make my whole identity being an emergency medicine PA. I don't like that to be my whole identity, but I definitely find a lot of purpose in it. You know, I found a lot of purpose in being a paramedic. You know, I think just kind of understanding where you're at with that is kind of the right answer. Yeah,
and you have to keep it the right way. I mean, however it is that the way that God is moving in you, you know, if I make it my everything, it's going to get real poisoned. And then I don't have any time for my family.
And I like to think that I put husband up here, father up here, and then emergency medicine PA a little bit lower on the totem pole. You know, I that balance is not the same every day. If I have a shift unfortunately, that's my highest priority of the day, and on a day off, then I don't have to give work any priority. But it's a balance that I'm constantly trying to find, I think. Do you guys have any final thoughts or anything you came today wanting to express or say to my main audience, which is EMTs, paramedics, and people in emergency medicine in general, that we didn't get to or that you wanted to express?
I'm just encouraged. I think, just by, you guys, you having this podcast and just that medicine is such a secular place.
Yeah.
But I think if you look and you peel back some of the layers, that there is a heck of a lot of God there.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, like you said, before, kind of, there are a lot more kind of Christians and believers than I think we would have thought. And it kind of reminds me, like, man, like why do we not know as much who each other are at work? I think it's so secular. I think we're afraid to talk about it. And, and it's, nerve wracking. One of my hardest cases last year, it was a rough code and death. And one of the nurses, came up to me, and I was relatively new. And she was like, I don't know, if you're a believer, but, we are, and, we're going to go pray. And I was like, what? It rocked
beautiful.
oh my gosh, it was the most encouraging thing that could have happened.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I'm used to being the only one, or thinking that I'm the only one.
I think the nurses are more open about it, because as providers, we're so scared of liability and is this going to get me fired? Is this going to go up the chain?
Yeah.
That's a big fear I have at work, is if I'm really open about what I really think about this, am I going to get...
Is your job more bigger than the gospel? If an opportunity presents itself to you, there's a teacher mentor of mine when I was in school. He would always say, we're not supposed to talk about it, but if an opportunity presents itself, how can I say no?
And here's where you get to sow little micro seeds along the way. So as my closing remark, I'll say, one, thank you for all you do. What a blessing. I respect you. You sign up to run into rooms that a lot of people would love to run out of. So thank you. Number two, you get permission to be human and to be yourself and to connect and to emote and to share your heart. I think maybe one of the downsides is that your job is so costly that it does drain you of that, so that when a moment happens, you either don't have the extra juice, or you feel like the machine would fire you if you showed humanity. So here's an example of, I think, what you could do to sow seed. I'm Daniel. So you ask, what's your full name when you go in? So it's whoever. John Robert Smith. Well, John Robert Smith, as you're leaving, I'm Daniel Wilson Grothe, and I'm a believer. And so here's what you have. You have my commitment tonight, that when I lay my head on the pillow, I'm going to think back through my day and all the people I talked to and all the people I saw. And I'm going to pray that God would strengthen you and God would help you and God would heal you. So I don't know who you are. You don't need to, I'm not putting anything on you. I'm just telling you that as Daniel Wilson Grothe, at the end of my day, I'm going to be praying for John Robert Smith. And you have my prayers, and all God's best to you. It took 15 seconds. You're not proselytizing. You're not twisting arms. You're not making someone feel bad. You're just being a human, and you're telling them what you're going to commit to them at the end of your day. And that wakes a room up. What? Oh, you can do that here? Oh, thank you. I've been waiting. You're a believer too? Oh, would you pray for me? Boom. So I just think you can sow seeds in a way that's not going to have corporate up the chain calling, asking who you are, and get that person out of there. You have permission to be human.
Especially if you're living your life, if you're the rest of your life consistent with that.
Yes.
If you're not being a jerkwad and then saying that, if you're living it out too, it's, you got to have the other side of the coin too.
Yes, that's good.
I love
Absolutely.
that.
Well, guys, thank you very much for your time. I know everybody's got busy schedules. Daniel probably most of all, so I really appreciate you coming in. And
thanks for your perspective.
Eric's on night shifts and stuff, so I appreciate you guys all coming in, and we'll end it there.
Cool.
Delight.
And then we